Hello, and welcome back to Headphone Highlights. Life has happened again, and once more I was unable to do a proper stream this week. I promise that next week we'll be back to streaming like normal. Things have just kind of gotten a little wild last couple of weeks, but they're finally going to start chilling down. But as usual, we gotta make sure we get these Headphone Highlights up to YouTube, so here we go. So I've said, I think a couple times now, that we've reached the end of our IEM category of highlights, but we're again gonna do one more because I took a little jump on something that I've been hearing a lot about lately. It's a little bit of a hype train recently, but I think they're really cool, and I wanted to try them out for myself after everything I was hearing and have been experiencing with them. Not only do I want to talk about them in a typical highlight fashion, but also for the first time, I think on the channel, we're going to do a proper IEM comparison, a straight head-to-head bout, if you will, for budget IEMs. So today we have the very popular Moondrop Chus. There they are. Just very simple, nice little design, small little IEMs. These are very popular right now. Getting a lot of buzz. Like I said, a bit of a hype train on these, but for good reason. Why these are interesting right off the bat is because they are $20. These are a $20 IEM. A $20 IEM that is getting a lot of attention from people who are interested in audio. So that's something to talk about. Now we have a couple other IEMs in that range, $20. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at these Chus, talk a little bit about them, and then we're going to compare them against other similarly priced IEMs or headphones that I think are contenders with these. I put a little bit more work into this than I think I usually do, but I'm still going to try and just wing this thing. So we'll talk about the build really quick. They have this really nice metal chassis for the drivers. It's a nice kind of matte finish on the metal with this nice subtle golden artwork on it. I'm not exactly sure what it's supposed to be. It looks just kind of like a nice subtle leaf pattern from a plant of some sort. They do have printed on. It's a little hard to see it. I'll do my best to showcase this, but they do have a right and left indicator printed on the chassis. There you go. There's your R. It's not the easiest thing to see. It's often kind of covered up by the cable, but they're there, so that does help. I am using the included nubs with these. These are just nice silicone nubs that have this kind of, what do you want to call that? A ridged pattern on it, which does seem to kind of affect the way these move and mold. They're very, very thin, and they contort and shape very, very easily, more so than your typical kind of silicone nubs. So they're really cool. The cable is unfortunately attached. It's a permanently attached cable, and that is unfortunate, though, we're talking about $20 IEMs. It shouldn't be that big of a surprise. So if you look there, yes, they are permanently attached. But for a $20 IEM, you shouldn't be that surprised. We will talk a little bit about that later when we're comparing to other IEMs, but for the time being, it's fine. And the cable itself is serviceable. It's pretty okay. It's a good length. It might be a little bit short for some people. For me, it's just fine. I think if it was any shorter, though, it would be a problem. So it works for me. It does have, I believe, that's the Moondrop logo there on this little separator, the splitter for the cable. And it terminates at a right angle 3.5mm plug. So pretty basic stuff. But the cable itself is just this nice kind of rubberized cable. If I really wanted to, I'm sure I can straighten it out more, but this is still a fairly new set of IEMs, so they're kind of still a little bit janky. but it has kind of this nice, subtle black and copper colorant to it, which is muted from the semi-transparent rubber coating around the cable. So it looks nice, and it matches kind of the overall aesthetic. These also came in a pretty cool little package in this cute little waifu box. I assume this is a character invented for this brand, invented for these headphones, and I guess this is Chu. I don't know, but it's a cute little box. And inside the box, we have a few little accessories, which are actually kind of nice. They come with this nice little bag. It's this kind of this felt textured bag that just has a simple button, but you can throw your IEMs in there if you want to and carry them around and whatever. This is totally an unnecessary thing, but it's a nice to have. They just threw it in there for the sake of it, and I appreciate that. It's nice. I like that. The other thing that they gave you, which is very interesting, I have not seen this before. I'm sure that it's not wholly unique to these headphones, but something I've not seen before. These are, you know, unlike most of the IEMs we have seen. This is just a straight cable coming right out of the IEM chassis. There's not a loop to go around the ear. However, the way these are designed very much seems to me that they are kind of intended to wrap around the ear. I'll do my best to explain this. So, oh my gosh, all the tangles. So when you're looking at it, the cable kind of comes off at an angle there. So it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense for it to be going straight down your ear. I suppose you could do that if you really wanted to, but it doesn't make for a very good fit, and it makes them rather loose in the ear. So instead, what I've been doing with them is I have been looping them around my ear. So to show you on the left side here, even though the cable goes off this way, I use that to go around the ear and in like so. So now the cable is wrapping up around my ear here, going back behind my ear, and draping down the side. And this works for me. This is a nice, good fit. It's nice, it's solid, it's isolating. My voice is very, very muffled, even with just the one in here. So they're very isolating, even with their default silicone nubs. And it's a good fit. It's really comfortable, it's solid, it's stuck in there, it's not gonna fall out. I can shake my head around and I'm not worried about it falling out. But if for whatever reason you don't like the feel of the loose cable being wrapped around your ear like this, they also include these. I've never seen this before, but basically what this is a makeshift little silicone, rubbery silicone attachment that you can put on here that you just kind of tuck the cable into. I'll do my best to, yeah, there we go. It just kind of whoop, slides right in there. Come on. And then it more or less kind of simulates now your more standard wrap around ear IEM style, right? Now it's kind of got that shape. I appreciate the idea behind this, and for some people it'll probably work just fine. For me, it doesn't do a very good job though. The rubber just kind of doesn't go around my ear properly, and then when I get this in here, it's just like it's not as isolating anymore. I have to really kind of cram it in there. It's a lot of finessing now, having this extra kind of rubberized thing. It's a nice thing to have. I get the idea behind it, and again, for some people it probably will work pretty good, but for me, I find it a lot easier just to wrap the wire around my ear. But still, interesting. Never seen that before. I kind of like it. I wish they had different sizes and maybe even different shapes of these. They only include the one set. So maybe if they had like a larger set, it would work better for bigger ears. Maybe if they had a less aggressive curve or something, it would work a little bit better. I don't know, but I get the idea and I think it's cool. Interesting accessories for an otherwise, you know, a $20 IEM. That's really cool stuff. Yeah, it's a good build. It's a very good build. I do wish the cable was removable. but I'm not going to dock it too much for that. I already kind of mentioned that the comfort's pretty good, and also comfort with IEMs is a very subjective thing, but in general, very good build and very decent feel and fit in the ear. So the sound, I'm going to try and handle this in a couple ways. So first here's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about the sound of these, and then that's going to be the baseline of what we're going to be comparing to. There's going to be two other headphones that we're going to be comparing to these that are both in that $20 range. And I have like my little list right here I made from today. So we're going to talk about these and the baseline and what I like about them and what I've noticed about them, and then we're going to compare that with the other two in our category. And the other two we have, no surprise, are these. These are those Yinyu KZ ZSN Pros that we have already taken a look at. These are a $20 IEM. They look quite a bit different, and they have some features in here that I think are actually a better buy than the Chus when it comes to the construction, for sure. But we'll talk about that when we get to that comparison. But we're also going to talk about the sound comparison. And the other thing we're going to talk about, and this is a bit of a stretch, I understand, but I think it's close enough and the price is the same that it's worth talking about. We're also going to compare against the Koss KS C75s. They're not IEMs, they're not technically in-ear headphones, but they do rest on your ears, so it's pretty close. And because they're also $20, I think it's worthwhile to compare against them. So, okay, back to the Chus. These sound really, really great. They're one of the more pleasant listening IEMs that I have heard, especially at this price range. They sound phenomenal for $20. Things that I have written down that I noted about them: they have really good imaging, good like instrument separation. They're surprisingly spacious. They have a decent amount of soundstage. It's not a huge amount of soundstage. They don't sound like, you know, your Fidelios or your Ship 9500s, but it's a good amount of soundstage for a little tiny IEM like this. So they sound pretty big, nice and spacious. They have a warmer signature. It's not very neutral, but it's also not super V-shaped, though it does lean more towards a V-shaped frequency. But they're a nice, warm, smooth sound. They have really impactful sub bass, which again is a surprising thing for tiny $20 IEMs like this. And I specifically in my notes here wrote down chest pounding sub bass, so it really resonates really hard. And you can feel it in your chest, which is a unique thing for such a tiny little headphone like this. And the bass extension, you know, when you got really impactful chest pounding sub bass, it's no surprise that there's really good bass extension. Bass reaches really, really far. The vocals are very, very clear. They're very present, very forward. So good vocal presence with these. I'm in big capital letters here, I wrote down huge sounding, and indeed they do. When you have that hugely impactful sub bass and that chest pounding resonance, combined with a little bit of soundstage, yeah, they sound huge. They sound so much bigger than they are, and that is a really satisfying, amazing thing. They have really good separation, so you're able to kind of it does a really good job of separating your low, mids, and highs. So it's not as we've already looked at, it's a fairly V-shaped frequency. It's not very neutral, but also everything is still very separated. It's fairly simple to distinguish all the different aspects of the sound. The high end is reduced. You are missing a little bit of the high-end details. As a benefit, you're not getting any sibilance, which is nice. But I do wish that the detail in the high end was a bit more sparkly, a bit more crisp. So you do miss out a little bit in your really high-end, top-end detail. But the result of that is a very pleasant, smooth, relaxing sound. I also wrote down here, so there is some slight bass blooming. The impact of the bass is really, really impressive, but it does tend to kind of rumble off and reach a little bit too much into the mid-range. So it can be, I don't want to say muddy, but the low end is not the cleanest, which, you know, it's a $20 headphone. You shouldn't be that surprised by that. You are sacrificing kind of a more clean, fluid bass range for that extra oomph and impact. So, you know, you gotta kind of pick your poison there. But I think they did a very nice job with this. While they lack a little bit in the high-end detail, their mid-range detail is very good. Again, especially in the vocals, vocal clarity is really awesome. In a nutshell, they're a very warm, relaxing, enjoyable sound that can hit really, really hard in your bass line. So they're a really fun, exciting little IEM, and you gotta love them for that. So keeping all that in mind, we're gonna compare them now directly with another $20 IEM, the Yinyu KZ ZSN Pros. I'm not going to talk too much about the like construction and build of these things because we have videos already on the channel for that. But right off the bat, these are maybe a little bit heavier, but most importantly, the Chus are $20 IEMs with a permanently attached cable, and that's acceptable because that's a $20 IEM. We shouldn't be that surprised. However, the KZ Z7N Pros, I have to keep looking because the name is so stupid, does have a detachable cable, and they're also $20. So this little IEM proves that it's not necessary to have a permanently attached cable with your $20 IEMs. It can be detachable, and that's always going to bring extra value, if you ask me. It just makes sense. If anything happens to the cable on those Chus, if anything happens to that cable, those Chus are dead, and there's nothing you can do about it other than going out and buying another set of Chus. If this cable fails on these Z7Ns, I can just go buy another cable. So, of course, it's only a $20 replacement either way. Gotta keep that in mind. So yeah, the Z7 Pros. How do they compare to the Chus? Okay, here's what I got written down here. These are a much more intimate IEM. They don't have the spaciousness, they don't have the soundstage of the Chus. Right off the bat, they're a lot more intimate. They're more narrow, kind of just forward-facing and present right there. So not a lot of space, very narrow, but also very intimate. They have really good, and I put down big, they have big sounding mid bass. So they don't have the same kind of impactful sub bass that the Chus have. They do have sub bass for sure. It's just not as hard hitting, and the bass range overall is probably not quite as punchy as it is in the Chus, but the mid bass is very big sounding. They're a lot brighter than the Chus, and because of that, they actually sound a lot closer to neutral. But the brightness is definitely there. It's a lot brighter. While the Chus are very, very warm, these are very, very bright in comparison. With that brightness and with that more intimate sound, you get a lot more speed. So these are a lot speedier, a lot faster sounding than the Chus. So with some of that really high, snappy tempo kind of music, this is a bit more enjoyable. And the vocals are very, very smooth on these. They're very, very clear. But I think that the vocals are a little bit more recessed than they are in the Chus. So you're kind of getting more of your high-end speed and maybe a little bit more high-end detail with these than you do with the Chus, but you are lacking a little bit, just a tiny bit, with your vocal presence. These are also very forward-facing, so while they're being intimate, it's also very forward. While the Chus have that kind of almost 360 degrees of sound all around you, these are forward. Everything sounds like it's right in front of you. It allows for good detail, and it allows for decent kind of forward-facing imaging, but it doesn't have that same spaciousness. The low end on these is very, very clean compared to the Chus. The Chus have, as I said, a tendency to kind of bloom a little bit. Less so with these. The low end on here, because it's not as impactful and doesn't rumble as far and extend as far into the mid-range, it just sounds a lot cleaner. But because of their more kind of neutral sound signature, and because they're more intimate and because there's less extension, these also sound like they have a little bit less dynamics than the Chus do. So you're missing a bit in dynamics in exchange for some more treble range detail, and especially mid-range detail and whatever. So that's your clear difference here. Chus are the warmer, more open and spacious version of the sound that you're going to get. These are a lot more intimate and a lot more, they're faster. There's a lot more neutral sounding, and still enjoyable, still very fun, but maybe not as kind of smooth and relaxed sounding as the Chus are. Now let's talk about the Koss KS C75s. These are not an in-ear headphone, so right off the bat, there's that kind of discrepancy. They produce sound in a different way. This entire pad is a speaker, so it's a different technology. We have to just accept that, but we're still gonna talk about them because they just go over your ear like that, and you kind of get the same benefits of having an IEM. These are hella more open, obviously. I don't have anything crammed into my ear, so you're getting a lot more open headphone kind of experience. I can hear everything around me. My voice is as clear as it would be if I didn't have these on. So they're very, very open. And it's a much, much larger speaker, but rather than going into your ear, it's just resting on your ear. So, you know, these are things you got to just take into consideration. We're specifically talking about how it's a $20 headphone that still serves pretty much the same purpose of being a very portable kind of isolating to just your ear on your head, fit and finish headphone. So how does it sound compared to the Chus and compared to the ZSN Pros? I'm going to say right off the bat, I have maybe a little bit of a bias towards Koss products because I love the sound that Koss products can make, and I love their value. I have quite a few Koss products, and that might be a video of itself down the line, but I will put that up front. That being said, sparkle. These sparkle. They have a absolutely wonderful high-end crispness and sparkliness. I was listening to something earlier today and it had this kind of nice little soft, subtle, high-pitched chiming sound, like a wind chime, and it just dazzled. It was so lovely. These also are extremely natural sounding. Compared to the other two, these have the most natural and the cleanest vocals by far. These are extremely clean. The low end in particular, of the three, these have the cleanest low end. They do not have the most impactful at low end, not at all. They don't reach nearly they don't have the same kind of chest bumping resonance that the Chus have. And they don't have the same kind of mid-range bigness that the ZSNs have, but they are the most accurate and detailed, cleanest bass of the three, for sure. They still do have really good sub bass, but it's accurate sub bass. It's not exaggerated in any way. So it sounds really, really lovely, and it's really accurate. They have very good imaging. The imaging is on par, if not better, than the Chus, and no surprise, they also have soundstage. They're an open head design, so it makes sense. That being said, I do think that the Chus have a wider soundstage than these do, which is surprising. But the Chus just have a much more spacious sound to them that feels a lot more around you, like it's encapsulating you. Whereas these, while they still have some spaciousness and they still have a little bit of soundstage, it's a bit more narrow. So it's not so much like it's everywhere around you. It's a little bit more like it's a cone shape in front of you, and it's kind of you're taking in everything here and maybe into the sides rather than everywhere around you. So interesting that they don't have quite the same spaciousness as the Chus. Slaps. These are very speedy, very snappy, slappy headphones. These are really, really great for high tempo, like power metal and anything that has a really snappy, punchy beat, because they're fast enough to keep up with that. So the problem with something like the Chus is because the low end can be so blooming and rumbling, it can kind of veil that kind of more crisp speediness, and it kind of makes something that's really fast and energetic sound a bit muted. Not so with these. These maintain fast energy. They have really, really excellent dynamics. Everything is really well separated, and everything has a good contrast, and it's really identifiable where things are sitting in those frequency ranges. Of the three, these have the most detail. Absolutely. They have more extension in the high range than the other three, and the extension in the low end, and like I said, still get pretty good, still reach pretty far. It's just not going, it's a lot more accurate, so it's not going to be as rumbling punching as the other two, particularly the Chus. Well, so it may sound, if you're listening to them back to back, it might sound like maybe these are a little bass recessed, but that's not really the case. These are just a lot more accurate with the bass. So these are in general a more mid-range focused headphone. The Chus are a more V-shaped focused headphone, and the ZSNs are kind of somewhere in between. They're a lot more, I'd say a bit more neutral than the other two. But of the three, I think these are probably the most like natural acoustic sounding. So that's something to consider. You have 3 sets of what I genuinely think are excellent options for a $20 headphone. I don't think you can go wrong with any of these, but there are differences that you need to consider. You know, is there a clear winner here? Not really. It's gonna depend on what you want. If you want smooth, relaxing, enjoyable stuff that pretty much anyone can enjoy, you probably want the Chus. They're really excellent with that. They have just a universal sound that anyone can enjoy. If you want something that's a lot more intimate and a lot more neutral, you probably want the ZSN Pros. Also, better build on the ZSN Pros. Of the 3, the ZSN Pros have the best build by far. Almost not exclusively because of the detachable cable, but that is a very big bonus. The Koss here are just overall pretty damn amazing. They are the most headphone sounding of the 3. That's a bit of a weird statement, I know, but you know, these two sound like IEMs. The Koss sound like over-ear headphones. So do with that what you will. But the point is here, you got more options than you might think. For $20, you can get crazy good headphones, and there are some variances of what might be closer to your tastes. So these are the 3 that we're looking at today. I love each and every one of them, and could not recommend them enough. I got links to all 3 in the description if you're interested. But yeah, there's your little IEM head-to-head dual extravaganza. Wow. Hope that was interesting. Again, I do promise to get back on track with my streams starting next week. And that is going to be, I'm saying it here, that's the end of IEMs for now. We are going to go into a new category next week, which is basically kind of going to be our wild card category. What does that mean exactly? I don't really know myself. Basically, headphones that I own that I just think are unique and interesting, that might be dynamic, might be planar, might be IEM, might be, you know, this and that I just didn't include in those other videos because I thought that they were unique enough on their own to fit in their own kind of separate category. So you can look forward to that next week. Until then, thank you very, very much for stopping by. Thank you very, very much for listening to me rant and ramble. And yeah, have a good rest of your day. Go listen to some kick-ass audio. Go. What are you doing? Stop watching. Go. Get out of here. Scram.